You know, right at the very edge of life, when the brain is failing and the mind is, well, supposed to be gone, something absolutely remarkable can happen. It's a phenomenon that challenges pretty much everything we think we know about consciousness, memory, and the brain itself. Today, we're going to dive into this profound medical puzzle, something known as terminal lucidity. So picture this. A young man is dying. Cancer has spread to his brain. For days, he's been totally unresponsive, can't speak, can't move. His family's there, preparing for the inevitable. And then, just out of nowhere, he opens his eyes, he's back, he's clear, and he starts talking. But here's the part that makes no sense. Medically, that conversation should have been impossible. A brain scan later showed that the tumors had basically eaten away and replaced his brain tissue. The machinery for thought and speech was, for all intents and purposes, gone. So how in the world did that happen? Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's a one-off miracle story, right? A fluke? Well, no. It's actually a documented phenomenon, and it has a name, terminal lucidity. And while this might be the first time you're hearing about it, it's a mystery that has been quietly puzzling doctors for centuries. Just so we're all on the same page, we're talking about patients whose minds are considered lost. People with severe Alzheimer's, massive strokes, brain tumors, you name it. Their brains are physically, demonstrably damaged. And yet, in their final hours or days, they suddenly get this period of completely unexplained mental clarity. And you know what's really wild? This isn't some brand new discovery. Back in the 19th century, doctors knew about this. It was rare, sure, but they reported cases of it. Then, for most of the 20th century, it just vanished from the medical literature. It was forgotten. It's only now, in the 21st century, that researchers are digging up these old files and finding new ones and realizing we've been overlooking something huge. To really wrap your head around just how baffling this is, you have to hear the stories themselves. And these aren't just fuzzy anecdotes, they're detailed accounts from doctors and from families, spanning all sorts of devastating illnesses. Let's start with Alzheimer's. The very definition of this disease is its relentless, irreversible destruction of the brain. It takes away memories, personality, everything. So there's this woman, right? For a whole year, she's been lost in the fog of dementia, doesn't even recognize her own son. Then one day, she sits up in bed, looks him right in the eye, calls him by name, and recites a piece of poetry. Perfectly. A little while later, she slipped back into that unresponsive state and passed away a month later. It's like her mind just switched back on for a moment. And this isn't just a modern thing. Let's rewind the clock way back to 1822. We're talking about a case involving a severe brain abscess, which is basically a massive destructive infection inside the skull. Okay, so this young man had been going downhill for years, depressed, losing his memory, in constant pain. Then, on his 19th day in the hospital, he suddenly gets out of bed, totally clear, says he feels great and is ready to go home. Just 15 minutes later, he collapsed and died. And the autopsy revealed, get this, 2 enormous, pus-filled sacs in his brain where healthy tissue should have been. There is no way he should have been able to talk, let alone plan his trip home. We see the same incredible pattern with strokes, too. And we know that strokes can cause catastrophic damage, literally severing the connection between the brain and the body. This 91-year-old woman was completely paralyzed, couldn't speak a word after having 2 strokes, her face was basically frozen. But in her final moments, she not only spoke clearly and with joy, she sat up and raised her arms, physical actions that her severely damaged brain should have had absolutely no way of commanding. These stories, they're deeply moving, right? But they also throw a giant wrench into modern science. They force us to ask a question that gets to the very heart of neuroscience. How is any of this even possible? And right here, this is the central conflict, the big paradox. On one side, you have the physical evidence, brains that are just ravaged by disease. And on the other, you have these incredibly lucid, complex, meaningful human moments. It's like the hardware is completely fried, but somehow the software runs perfectly one last time. And that's why this is such a head-scratcher for science. Our whole model is that the brain creates the mind. You break the brain, you break the mind. End of story. But terminal lucidity seems to suggest that maybe, just maybe, our models are missing a huge piece of the puzzle. So this isn't just some weird fringe phenomenon.
Understanding what's going on here could have massive implications, not just for our understanding of the brain, but for how we care for people at the end of their lives.
So, researchers are really starting to pay attention. And here's why. First, it forces us to rethink that simple link between the mind and the brain. Second, if memories can come flooding back after the parts of the brain that supposedly store them are destroyed, then where are they coming from? Third, if we could figure out the biological switch that flips to allow this clarity, even for a moment, could it lead to new treatments for dementia? And finally, just on a human level, knowing this can happen can help families and caregivers prepare for what can be an incredibly meaningful final gift. In the end, we're left with this one giant question that echoes through all of these stories. If a mind can shine so brightly when the brain is shutting down, what does that really tell us about consciousness itself? Does the brain produce our consciousness, like a light bulb produces light? Or is it more like a radio receiver, just tuning into it? Is our sense of self just a biological glitch, or is it something much more resilient, something that can flicker back to life even when its physical home is falling apart? For now, the mind's final light remains a beautiful and profoundly deep mystery.